Hello, I'm Chris Fowler for SportsCentury. In an era of escalating media warfare, when images of athletic greatness blared and glared from the mass marketing battlements, Barry Sanders remained a conscientious objector, shunning honors and glory with a silent diligence. For a decade, he took our breath away, running with controlled abandon, scuttling and spinning to the brink of the all-time career rushing record. Then, with the suddenness of one of his lightning cutbacks, he was gone from the game, leaving us wondering.
When God created Barry Sanders, even he didn't know what he made.
If there was an artist, ever an artist, I mean, he was a Picasso. He was one of the few that would make other athletes' jaw drop. You go, oh man, did you see that? You call up, another top running back. Hey, Dickerson, man, did you check that out, man?
They had him trapped. All of a sudden he went in, he did something, spun around, he was on the ground, and his hand was down, and he spurted out, and he went up the sideline. I said, man, yeah, I saw it, you just don't know how he does it.
Hurry up to the races, 30, 20, 15, 10, they'll never get it. Touchdown, Lions! He's done it again! Killer or what?
I asked him, what is it that you see in all this confusion? How do you know there's a gap there? How do you know that's where I'm going? And he goes, I see the same thing you see. I can just get there.
There are a couple things that I fear. Rats, snakes, my wife, and Barry Sanders in space.
Another stop-start run by Barry Sanders. He is putting on a show.
He actually ran into the front line, bounced back one play, and decided where he wanted to go. And who can do that?
They said Gail Sayers used to stop on a dime and, take if his head's a Tez and keep going, right? Well, Barry Sanders stop on a dime, pick it up and flip it, and actually as his head's a Tez, shake you down and then continue.
I remember one time I tackled him all by myself. I felt like a little kid that went to the potty all by himself.
Just thinking about trying to grab this man and just continually it's like trying to catch a fly and you just can't catch the guy. You think you hit him, and there's no Barry there.
See these fingers? Broke this one twice and that one here once trying to tackle it. I mean, it's like you try to tackle thin air.
Barry Sanders' greatness is a matter of record. Selected for the Pro Bowl in each of his 10 NFL seasons and owner of 4 rushing titles, he and Jim Brown are the only players to average 5 yards with 1,000 or more carries. His 76 games with at least 100 yards are second only to Walter Payton. But beyond the stats and the taped images, the measure of the man within remains an X for unknown.
I don't know if anybody really knows Barry except Barry, even those who are close to him.
I think he's probably had the hardest personality to define of any superstar in the last 40 or 50 years. I mean, you would ask him a question, he'd go, That was his answer to everything.
He used to walk in New York City. He loved the masses of people. And he'd pull his hat way down over his head. And he would walk in New York for miles. He loved being anonymous.
From the outside, you had people saying, this isn't real. He's not really like that. Yeah, he is. I mean, here's a guy that we had to go get out of the shower after the Holiday Bowl in 1988 so he could accept the MVP award.
An earlier demonstration of Sanders' disinterest and accolades came in 1985 when he closed in on the City League rushing record in his last regular season game for North High School in Wichita, Kansas.
In the fourth quarter, as he came off the field, I called him over. And I said, Barry, do you want to stay in? And I'll keep the first unit in with you, and we'll get some more yards towards the title. He looked at me square in the eye and said, Coach, let the young kids play.
As a Detroit Lion 4 years later, Sanders was within easy reach of the NFL rushing crown when he once again backed away.
I told him 10 more yards, you have it. And he said, have what? And I said, you have the rushing title. He said, really? He said, how many yards? I said, 10 yards. He said, you know what? It's not that important.
I don't remember any record I've ever wanted to break. I think it's just my makeup as a human being, who I am, and my outlook on life.
I remember chasing him down one day after a game. I said, Barry, where are you going? I'm going home.
Well, there's a whole room of reporters want to talk to you. Oh, really? Why?
The extraordinary nature of his talent didn't make him feel as if he himself was an extraordinary person and needed to be treated extraordinary. And I think in many ways his life has been a drive towards simplicity.
One time he was in Miami at a hotel, evidently a very luxurious hotel, 5-star hotel, but he would leave the hotel, go to a laundromat, and he would wash his own clothes.
I think Freud would have a field day with this guy. Here's a guy, made millions of dollars, lived in a modest home, yet he held out 3 times in his career. And then at the height of his career, he walks away from football immortality.
Everything about Barry you have to attribute to his family and his support system and his upbringing. When you come from such a large, spiritually grounded family, it keeps you humble.
Born the 7th of 11 children on July 16, 1968 in Wichita, Barry Sanders was influenced by the opposing strengths of his parents, Shirley and William.
He might have been his father physically, but he was his mother mentally and personally and everything about her.
That's the side that most people see, the generous, the humble, not very assertive. But he has a lot of characteristics that are similar to my father, because once he makes a decision, then he's going to stand on it.
My father tends to be very serious and stern and no-nonsense type person.
I remember when he was talking to Barry about how to field a punt, and it almost sounded like he was scolding Barry, and I think he looked at Barry and saw that Barry felt as if he might be getting chewed out.
Daddy saw in Barry a lot of things Barry did not see in himself, a lot of potential, but I don't think my father saw it as probably pushing too hard.
Whatever I say to him, he never took it personal, because I used to use some pretty rough language, and then it seemed like it never affected me.
As a high school junior, Sanders played wingback and returned kicks. Moved to starting tailback in the 4th game of his senior year, he tore up the league, gaining over 1,400 yards. But at 5'8", he was literally overlooked by almost all the major colleges.
Well, I know they kept thinking about, oh, he's so short and he's so little, but his elusiveness is what made it. The young man can avoid tackles like nobody else.
We could have recruited him. We looked at him. He was small. And I think Oklahoma State was about the only school that recruited him.
While waiting for the starting tailback job at Oklahoma State, Sanders led the nation in kickoff return average as a sophomore in 1987. But once he got the ball full-time the next season, he set 34 NCAA records, including rushing for 2,628 yards and scoring 39 touchdowns. Yet when it came time to accept college football's ultimate reward, his instinct was to step back.
On the practice field 2 days before, Barry walks up to me and he said, I'm not sure about that thing that we're doing. And I said, well, that thing's the Heisman Trophy presentation. He said, yeah, I don't want to do that.
The 1988 winner of the Heisman Award is Barry Sanders of Oklahoma State University.
He absolutely could care less about winning that award. He won it, accepted it, and then he promptly gave it to his dad.
Their relationship has gone up and down over the years, and I think it drove him nuts a little bit that Barry wouldn't boast about himself more. Even though he said Jim Brown was the best, he wanted Barry to be the greatest ever.
I have my father to forever remind me that, you know, I will never be close to Jim Brown in talent and skill level.
I think his father thought that might motivate him. If he knew that he wouldn't be the greatest back in his father's mind.
It was never a put down or a way to subject him to his authority or anything like that.
Their relationship has grown stronger because of the obstacles that they've had to face, them disagreeing on the decisions that Barry has had to make.
Early in 1989, the father-son relationship was stressed nearly to the breaking point.
William really wanted Barry to go pro. After his junior year, his mother didn't want him to go pro. And that was sort of a big point of contention in the family, because his mother wanted his education, wanted him to graduate.
She thought he should go get a degree to, she say, help his self-esteem, and I told her he'd get $10 million, he could buy all the self-esteem he needed.
How much pressure did William Sanders exert on Barry? He might as well have picked him up, walked him over to a window, and held him out and dangled him by his ankles. 20 stories up and said, Barry, you're leaving Oklahoma State. You're leaving Oklahoma State. He was a guy who'd been poor all of his life and was sitting on a lottery ticket.
Barry has told me that there were some pretty intense conversations about him going. Very intense. He really liked college life. He enjoyed his teammates. He enjoyed the camaraderie, and perhaps wasn't ready in his mind to make the jump to pro.
It was clearly understood that the decision whether to go or stay was his. My father has a very loud opinion, but the final decision was Barry's.
The decision was based in part upon the financial hardship that my family and also I am faced with. I feel a duty to try to relieve some of those pressures.
I went to Oklahoma State to work him out with all the scouts, and this little guy came on the field. They have this thing you have to jump and hit these things to see how high you jump, vertical leap. And I looked up and all I saw was Barry's feet going past my eyes.
I had a cigar in my pocket and gave it to Wayne Fonts, and Wayne pulled the cigar out, lit it up, and said, all the rest of you guys can go home because he's going to be a Detroit Lion.
It was a guy with a heart this big, but if you didn't know the heart was there, he looked really apathetic.
They probably think he's not really as genuine and as humble and meek and giving and loving as, you know, he portrays himself to be. I'm not saying he's perfect, but all those characteristics, I know that Barry has those.
In 1989, Barry Sanders, the third pick of the draft, entered the green glow of the NFL. And one of the first things he did after signing with Detroit was to send 10% of his $2.1 million bonus money to the Paradise Baptist Church back in Wichita. If his father's ambition drove him to the NFL, his mother's abiding sense of charity seemed to keep him morally grounded.
He would sit there and turn down $4 or $5 million in endorsements, and yet maybe the Boys and Girls Club in Detroit would call up and he would spend a week at their camp for nothing.
He paid for virtually everybody in his family's college education.
Most teams have clubhouse guys, and this young man was trying to work his way to make some money in the summer and to go to college. Barry just came up to him and he said, when you're leaving, the kid said, tomorrow. Barry wrote him a check for college.
In 1994, Sanders' credibility was questioned when it was revealed that he, a self-professed believer in celibacy outside of marriage, fathered a son, Barry James, with girlfriend Aletha House.
Something that really attracted me to him in the beginning of our relationship was the fact that he was confessing Christ. We had actually a 6-year relationship before we had BJ. And so those beliefs, we both took those very seriously at the time.
You talked about not having premarital sex. Were you worried the mixed message that they were getting with this?
I can't say I wasn't worried. It's just something that happened. I mean, I didn't really plan it.
I thought that he came across as a bit of a hypocrite. Not a bad guy, but a bit of a hypocrite in that one area.
There was some disappointment when they first came out, but I think most people, like I did, because he's a Christian doesn't mean that he's perfect, and I think it showed that he was human.
Our plans were to make this work, to make the best of a bad situation at the time.
Although Sanders' relationship with House ended 2 years after the birth of their son, his bond with BJ remained strong.
He seemed like he was a caring father, and he was one of those fathers that was trying to shy away from his responsibilities.
BJ would come out to practice, and to see him on the sideline yelling, "Go, Daddy, go!" And then Barry going over to play with him after practice is something special.
On the field, Sanders continued to run with unmatched grace and agility, baffling defenders with nearly every carry as he ghosted toward Walter Payton's rushing record of 16,726 yards. But the great runner had a secret.
Before the '97 season, he had a brief holdout before training camp. Maybe a couple of weeks later, he said, you know, almost didn't come back.
He called me and he said, I'm thinking about quitting football. I said, Barry, you're thinking about doing what? He said, I'm thinking about quitting. I said, son, please don't quit. This is not the time to quit.
In 1997, Sanders returned for his 9th season. On the way to sharing his 2nd league MVP award, he joined Eric Dickerson and O.J. Simpson as the only NFL players to eclipse 2,000 yards rushing in a season.
And now the crowd senses history.
I never heard the dome that loud. It was just vintage Barry Sanders. 3 yards here, 5 yards here, 6 yards here, and boom.
Barry cut back. Now he's got it. 50, 40, 30. He's well over 2,000 now. Holy mackerel.
With a loss to Baltimore, the Lions finished the 1998 campaign at 5-11. Sanders, meanwhile, had gained over 1,100 yards for the 10th straight season. With less than 1,500 yards between him and Peyton's record, the fire inside was beginning to die.
He called me the day after and said, you know, I cried in my locker yesterday. And he goes, I might be done.
More than once, he said, there are 3 reasons why I'm going to keep playing. If I'm healthy, if I'm competitive, and I'm having fun. And he said, if I don't have those things, I'm going to walk away.
Towards the end of his career, he started to see a little bit of the cracks in terms of his frustration with the losing. He saw that if they were probably several years away from winning, even if they did everything right.
He did not see the commitment from the front office, and at some point, he even felt like they were pointing the finger at him for getting a big contract that made them cut some of those guys.
When Bobby Ross came in, he came in with the edict that the superstar is going to be treated the same as the taxi squad player. And that's where he and Barry butted heads.
One time we're in a meeting, and Barry was criticized indirectly about not hitting a hole. And he sat back in his chair, and all he did was just say, wow. That came straight from Coach Ross.
Unless I was approached by Barry or anyone else, I would have to assume that there were no problems.
If he felt strongly about something, it would have had an influence on what we did. But I never had the sense that Barry was full of these strong thoughts that were running counter to what we were attempting to do.
People point to Barry and go, B, you gonna say something? You get up and walk away. He goes, that's not my job.
In the months following the 1998 season, Barry Sanders did not communicate with his teammates or with head coach Bobby Ross. In retrospect, that lingering silence was perhaps the strongest sign of all.
Bobby made every effort in the world to try to get an explanation from him, to talk to him. I mean, he camped on his doorstep.
My question was, he never did return the call. And Barry is his own man. So when I wasn't getting the response, although I was surprised, at the same time, I wasn't shocked.
We've learned Lions running back Barry Sanders will announce his retirement via his representatives, 1,458 yards shy of breaking the all-time rushing record held by Walter Payton.
In a statement published on July 28, 1999 in the Wichita Eagle, Sanders explained his decision to leave football and almost $21 million left in his contract with cryptic eloquence. He said that his desire to leave the game was greater than his desire to remain in it. He was 31.
It was a tough situation for both sides, you know. We weren't, I don't think, on the best terms, right after it happened. I can't speak for them, but I'm sure they were somewhat disappointed.
We weren't mad, we were sad that it was over. But we also knew that when he made up his mind, he stuck to it.
To just walk away and not tell so many people who loved you and adored you why, and helped you earn this salary. And I think he owed them that goodbye.
I can't recall anything that had that type of dramatic, immediate impact. It was like the city just got punched in the gut.
He's gutless. He's selfish. No debate. Awful. It's disgusting. That's all I have to say.
I don't have a problem with him retiring, but I didn't really appreciate the way it was done. I just felt that he should have done it himself.
Why would anybody walk away from what he had? It didn't make any sense. That's when the guesswork really started. Why did Barry do it?
I think the insiders mostly thought that he was trying to be traded. He was trying to work out some kind of a deal so that the Lions would let him go to another team.
He told me point blank, hey, I'm not mad at anyone. All these rumors about me sitting out and then coming back and wanting to be traded and everything, he said, that's all stuff that's been created. That's not me.
I went to his house, I spoke to him on the phone, I had lunch with them. I did whatever you could do. I said, we'd like for you to play for us. Do you want to play? And he said, no, I appreciate you guys are flattering, but I'll let you know if I do. Okay, I'll take that as a no.
In 2003, Sanders wrote in his autobiography that he had quit because he believed the Lions front office was not committed to winning. Describing that conclusion as having slammed him harder than any linebacker ever had, he insisted there was no bitter carryover.
I don't really have any regrets. God, I mean, I like my life the way it is, and I knew that I was walking away from something that was wonderful. But I think life in general can be wonderful.
In August of 2004, Sanders, at 36, became the third youngest player to enter the Pro Football Hall of Fame, behind only Gale Sayers and Jim Brown.
I was always glad to be a part of a team, going out every weekend with the same purpose and goal in mind. And in that way, I felt special.
There is something to be said for any type of entertainer who knows when to leave the stage at the right time. Barry left too soon. He left with the audience still clamoring for more.
At a quiet ceremony in November of 2000, Barry Sanders married Detroit television reporter Lauren Campbell, and 9 months later they had a son, Nigel. Sanders stays in touch with his other son, BJ, who lives with his mother in Oklahoma City. Despite keeping a low profile, Sanders sometimes can be found on the card show circuit. At one show, a boy told him, "My father thinks you're the greatest runner that ever played." Smiling, Sanders replied softly, "That's very nice of him." For SportsCentury, I'm Chris Fowler.